The sterile smell of antiseptic clung to the air in the hospital room, mingling with the faint scent of wilted flowers that my children had brought. I lay there, propped up against the stiff pillows, feeling more like a relic than a person. The muted beeping of machines was a constant reminder of my frailty, and it echoed the thoughts racing through my mind. I was only 68, but in that moment I felt like I was already fading away, a mere shadow of my former self. The stroke had robbed me not only of my health, but also of the respect I once commanded in my family. As I gazed out the window, the world outside was vibrant and alive, a stark contrast to the dullness that enveloped me. I could see children playing in the park, their laughter ringing like music through the glass. I longed to join them, to feel the sun on my skin and the grass beneath my feet, but the reality was that I was stuck in this room, a prisoner of my own body. My children, once my pride and joy, now seemed like strangers, their faces twisted by an ambition I had never anticipated. They spoke in hushed tones, their laughter echoing through the sterile walls, but I knew their laughter was not for me. It was for the future they envisioned, a future that included my estate, my legacy, my very existence reduced to a dollar sign. At the family gathering that followed my discharge, I tried to mask my discomfort with a smile, but my heart ached as I watched them. They joked about their plans for when I was no longer around, their voices dripping with a casual cruelty that left me reeling. "Can you believe she thinks she can keep all this?" one of them had said, laughter bubbling up like a cruel tide. I had felt the warmth of tears prickling my eyes, but I held them back, unwilling to show any weakness. It was as if they believed I was no longer a person but merely an obstacle in their path to wealth. I had trusted them, nurtured them, and sacrificed so much for their happiness, but now they were plotting against me, and the realization sent a chill through my bones. I was not just battling my health. I was fighting for my dignity against the very people I had loved unconditionally. The betrayal stung like a fresh wound, and I found myself grappling with a whirlwind of emotions, anger, sadness, and an unexpected resolve. I wouldn't let them take my life away from me, not without a fight. In the quiet moments of the night, as I lay in bed, I replayed their words in my mind. Each jab, each laugh felt like a dagger piercing my heart. What had I done to deserve this? I had given them everything, yet they saw me as a burden. I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders, knowing that the court date loomed ahead like a dark cloud, threatening to unleash a storm of conflict. I couldn't let them win. I had to reclaim my power and expose their greed. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill my lungs as I steeled myself for the battle ahead. This was not just about my estate. It was about proving to myself and to them that I was still here, still fighting, and still worthy of respect. With each passing day, the weight of the impending court case pressed down on me, and I could almost feel the tension crackling in the air around me. I had to prepare myself, to find a way to navigate this treacherous path. My heart raced at the thought of facing them in court, the very people who had once filled my life with joy now poised to strip me of my legacy. I was determined to uncover the truth, to show them that I was more than just a frail woman in a hospital bed. I was Melissa, their mother, and I would not go quietly into the night. As I sat in that hospital room, surrounded by the ghosts of my past and the harsh reality of my present, I knew one thing for certain. I would not be reduced to a punchline in their twisted game. I would stand tall, reclaim my dignity, and face whatever storm awaited me. This was only the beginning, and I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine. The air in my home felt thick, almost suffocating, as I prepared for the family dinner that had been hastily arranged. The walls, once adorned with laughter and warmth, now loomed like silent sentinels, bearing witness to the growing rift between us. I could smell the rich aroma of rosemary and garlic wafting from the kitchen, but it did little to comfort me. Instead, it served as a reminder of the countless meals I had shared with my children, meals that now felt like distant memories. As I set the table, my hands trembled slightly, betraying the anxiety that bubbled beneath the surface. My children arrived, their voices bright and lively, but I could sense the undercurrents of tension threading through their laughter. They exchanged glances, their eyes darting toward me like hawks sizing up their prey. The moment I took my seat, I felt the weight of their stares, heavy and accusatory. It was as if they were silently calculating their next move, their minds preoccupied with thoughts of my impending absence and the estate that would soon be up for grabs. I forced a smile, but it felt like a mask, one that could shatter at any moment. "So, Mom, how are you feeling?" my daughter Sarah asked, her tone deceptively sweet. I could see through the facade. The concern in her voice was laced with impatience. It was an inquiry meant to gauge how much longer I would remain a fixture in their lives. "You know, with everything going on," she trailed off, and I could feel the unspoken words hanging in the air, tainted with a sense of urgency. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry. "I'm managing, thank you," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. I could hear the clinking of silverware against plates, the sound sharp and jarring, punctuating the silence that enveloped us. They laughed again, but this time the sound felt hollow to me, an echo of something that used to be genuine. I glanced at my son Mark, who was engrossed in his phone, a slight smirk playing on his lips. It was as if he were reveling in some private joke, one that excluded me entirely. As dinner progressed, I watched them interact, and a wave of confusion washed over me. How had we gone from a loving family to this? Their laughter felt like a mockery, each chuckle a reminder of my vulnerability. I could see them discussing their plans for the future, oblivious to the fact that I was still very much alive, very much fighting for my place in this family. I felt a surge of anger bubbling within me, a fierce need to reclaim my voice, but I held back, afraid that any outburst would shatter what little connection remained. After dinner, I retreated to the living room, the familiar scent of old books and leather filling my lungs as I sank into the worn armchair. My heart raced as I replayed the evening in my mind, each moment a reminder of how my children had turned their backs on me. I could hear their muffled laughter from the kitchen, and it twisted the knife deeper into my heart. They spoke as if I were already gone, their words infused with a casual cruelty that left me reeling. In that moment of solitude, I felt the walls closing in around me. The shadows danced in the dim light, and I closed my eyes, trying to block out the memories of happier times. I remembered the nights spent reading to them, the vacations filled with laughter, and the countless sacrifices I had made to provide for their futures. How could they so easily forget? I took a deep breath, clenching my fists, feeling the cool fabric of the chair beneath me. I was not ready to be erased, not yet. My resolve began to harden like steel, and I knew I had to prepare for the confrontation that awaited me in court. As the night wore on, I felt a sense of determination rise within me, battling the confusion and anger that had threatened to consume me. I would not allow their greed to dictate my fate. I would face them in court, armed with the truth and a fierce desire to reclaim my dignity. The impending confrontation loomed over me like a storm cloud, but I was ready to weather it. I would remind them that I was more than just a figurehead in their plans. I was their mother, and I would not go quietly into the night. The night was dark and heavy, but within me flickered a light of hope, a promise that I would stand my ground and fight for what was mine. The morning sun filtered through the sheer curtains of my living room, casting a soft golden hue across the space. I sat at the dining table, surrounded by an array of court documents, my fingers brushing against the crisp paper as if it were a lifeline. The air was thick with the scent of brewed coffee, but it did little to lift the heaviness in my heart. I could hear the faint chirping of birds outside, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within me. My children had gathered in the kitchen, their voices low and conspiratorial, the tension palpable even from a distance. As I glanced at the documents spread before me, my stomach churned with anxiety. The words seemed to blur together, each line a reminder of the impending battle. I had spent countless hours poring over these papers, and yet doubt crept in like a thief in the night. Would my efforts be enough to protect what I had worked so hard for? The thought of losing my estate to the very people I had nurtured made my chest tighten. My resolve wavered as I replayed their mocking laughter from the dinner, their eyes shimmering with a greed I had never witnessed before. I could hear Sarah's voice rise above the others, her laughter tinged with an edge that cut through the warmth of the morning. "Can you believe she thinks she can fight us?" she said, and I felt the sting of her words echo in my mind. It was as if they were rehearsing their victory dance, plotting my demise while I sat merely a few feet away. My heart raced, a furious drum in my chest, as I realized how deeply they viewed me as an obstacle rather than a mother. I had to gather my strength. I had to prepare myself for the confrontation that awaited in the courtroom. Taking a deep breath, I forced myself to focus on the task at hand. I pulled out a notepad and began jotting down my thoughts. "What do I want to say?" I scribbled, my handwriting shaky but determined. I wanted to convey not only the facts but also the emotions behind them. I was not just defending my estate. I was fighting for my dignity, my right to be seen as more than just a financial burden. With each word, the fire within me grew stronger. I would not allow their greed to overshadow my life's work. Suddenly, a loud crash from the kitchen startled me. I jumped up, my heart pounding as I rushed to see what had happened. As I entered, I found Mark holding a shattered plate, bits of ceramic scattered across the floor like fragments of my broken family. "Oops, my bad," he said, a smirk playing on his lips. I could see the amusement in his eyes, as if the chaos was just an extension of their game. I forced a smile, masking the turmoil inside, but the bitterness bubbled beneath the surface. "It's just a plate, Mark, but maybe you should take a bit more care," I started, but he interrupted me with a dismissive wave of his hand. "Relax, Mom. It's not like you'll need these things for much longer anyway," he shot back, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, not from embarrassment but from anger. How could he be so callous? I wanted to scream, to unleash the torrent of emotions that had been building inside me, but I held back, knowing that any outburst would only confirm their perception of me as a burden. As I stepped back into my sanctuary, I closed my eyes, trying to calm the tempest within. My thoughts drifted to memories of better times, when laughter had filled our home, not the acrid tension that now suffocated it. I remembered the countless family dinners, the warmth of shared moments, and the love I had poured into raising them. But those memories felt like shards of glass, beautiful yet sharp, cutting into the present reality where my children plotted against me. I sat back down at the table, the documents waiting patiently, and I took a moment to collect myself. I needed to be strategic. I recalled the conversations I'd had with my friend Linda, who had encouraged me to stand firm. She believed in my strength, in my right to fight for what was mine. Her unwavering support felt like a lifeline, reminding me that I was not alone in this battle. I picked up the phone and texted her, my fingers trembling as I typed, "I need you tomorrow, can you come?" I hit send, feeling a flicker of hope igniting within me. As the hours passed, I felt the weight of despair threatening to crush me, but I fought against it. I needed to channel that despair into determination. I recalled the moment in the hospital when I had vowed not to be reduced to a punchline. That memory burned bright in my mind, fueling my resolve. I would not let their plans unfold without a fight. I would gather my strength and confront them in the courtroom, armed with the truth and the knowledge that I was worthy of respect. With renewed vigor, I dove back into the court documents, analyzing every detail. The evidence I had collected was crucial, and I knew I had to present it in a way that would make them see the truth. I began to outline my strategy, jotting down key points I wanted to address. I envisioned the courtroom, the judge's expression, and how I would stand tall in the face of their accusations. My heart raced as I imagined their shocked faces when I revealed the truth they thought I was oblivious to. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and plans, each one more determined than the last. I paced my room, the familiar scent of lavender from the candles I lit filling the air, offering me a sense of calm. I closed my eyes, imagining the courtroom, the weight of my children's gazes upon me. I could almost hear the whispers, the snickers, but I would not crumble under the pressure. I would rise above it all, reclaiming my dignity and asserting my rights. I thought about how pivotal the next day would be, not just for me but for my children too. They needed to see the consequences of their actions, the reality of what they were trying to do. As dawn broke, the first rays of sunlight pierced through the darkness, and I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. I was ready to face whatever lay ahead. I stood before the mirror, fixing my hair and straightening my shoulders. Today was not the day I would be a victim. Today was the day I would fight back. I took a deep breath, whispering to myself, "This ends with me." The resolve in my voice surprised me, but it was the truth. I would not allow their greed to define the narrative of my life any longer. I was Melissa, their mother, and I would stand my ground no matter the cost. The road ahead was fraught with tension, but I was determined to navigate it with grace and strength. I would not let despair dictate my actions. Instead, I would harness it into a powerful force for change. With each step, I felt the weight of their expectations and their plans pressing against me, but I knew I was ready. I would protect my estate, reclaim my dignity, and confront my children with the truth. This was just the beginning of my fight for justice, and I would not back down. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation, the air thick with tension as the judge took her seat. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the dust motes swirling lazily, casting an ethereal glow over the proceedings. My heart raced, pounding against my ribcage like a drum, each beat echoing the weight of the moment. I could feel the eyes of my children boring into me, their expressions a mix of arrogance and disbelief, as if they still couldn't fathom that I would dare to stand against them. I sat tall, the cool surface of the table grounding me as I glanced around the room, searching for any semblance of support. My friend Linda was seated behind me, her presence a comforting reminder that I was not entirely alone in this fight. Her unwavering belief in my strength flickered like a beacon in the tumultuous sea of emotions crashing over me. I took a deep breath, letting the scent of polished wood and leather fill my lungs, a stark contrast to the bitterness gnawing at my insides. As the proceedings began, I felt a surge of determination. The attorney representing my children stood up, his voice smooth and condescending. "Your Honor, we are here to discuss the validity of the claims made by Mrs. Melissa regarding her estate. It is imperative to note that her current condition raises questions about her competency to manage her assets," he declared, his words dripping with false concern. Anger flared within me, a fire igniting at the suggestion that I was unfit to make decisions about my own life. I could feel my hands clenching into fists, the nails digging into my palms, grounding me in that moment. This was not only a battle for my estate, it was a battle for my dignity, my right to be seen as a capable individual rather than a mere figure in their plans. "Objection, Your Honor," I called out, surprising even myself with the strength of my voice. The courtroom fell silent, all eyes turning towards me, the weight of their gazes heavy. I straightened my back, summoning every ounce of courage I had. "I am more than capable of managing my affairs. My children do not have the right to decide my worth based on their greed." The words spilled out with a ferocity I hadn't expected, each syllable a declaration of my determination. The attorney recoiled slightly, but quickly regained his composure. "Mrs. Melissa, please remember to keep your comments directed to the court," he said, his tone condescending, but I could see the flicker of surprise in his eyes. I was not the weak, frail woman they thought I was. I could feel Linda's support behind me, her silent encouragement pushing me forward. The judge, a stern woman with sharp features, raised an eyebrow, her expression unreadable. "Mrs. Melissa, your passion is commendable, but I must remind you that this is a court of law, not a platform for emotional outbursts," she said, her voice firm yet not unkind. I nodded, swallowing my frustration, but the fire within me had been lit. As the day progressed, my children took turns presenting their version of events, their narratives laced with manipulation. Each time they spoke, I felt the walls of the courtroom close in around me, the air thickening with tension. They painted me as a burden, a liability, all while maintaining their innocent facade. "Mom's health has deteriorated significantly, and it is clear that she cannot manage her own affairs," my son Mark insisted, his tone condescending yet practiced. I could see the way he glanced at the judge, as if seeking her approval, and it made my blood boil. "Mark, that's not true," I interjected, my voice ringing through the room. "I'm fighting for my life and my dignity. You are the ones who have conspired against me." The courtroom erupted into murmurs, the tension palpable as I felt my resolve harden. Their laughter echoed in my mind, their cruel jests from family gatherings replaying in my thoughts like a haunting melody. I could feel the tears prickling at the corners of my eyes, but I fought them back, refusing to show any sign of weakness. In that moment, I was reminded of all the times I had sacrificed for them, all the love I had poured into raising them, and how they had turned against me. As the proceedings continued, my attorney stood to present my case, outlining the evidence I had meticulously gathered. I could see Linda nodding encouragingly, her confidence in me fueling my determination. I had to expose the truth, to unveil their greed for the world to see. "Your Honor, we have evidence that shows Mrs. Melissa has been fully aware of her financial affairs and has made sound decisions regarding her estate," my attorney stated, his voice steady as he presented the documents. The judge reviewed the papers, her expression contemplative, and I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, the tide was turning, but Mark was not ready to back down. "That evidence is circumstantial at best. My mother is clearly in denial about her condition and has been manipulated into believing she can fight us," he argued, his voice rising, desperation creeping in. My heart raced at his words, the familiar taste of betrayal flooding my senses. I had raised him, nurtured him, and yet here he was, trying to strip away everything I had worked for. The frustration bubbled within me, a boiling pot ready to overflow. "You don't get to decide my worth based on your greed," I shouted, my voice echoing through the courtroom once more. This was my moment, the culmination of every struggle I had faced since my stroke. I would not be silenced any longer. The judge raised her hand, silencing the room. "Mrs. Melissa, you must allow your attorney to speak. This is not a personal attack, this is a legal matter," she reminded me, her tone firm. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down. I was fighting for my dignity, and I had to channel my anger into strength. The tension in the room crackled like static, the energy building as we neared the climax of the day's proceedings. I could feel the weight of my children's expectations pressing down on me, their belief that they would easily win this battle hanging in the air like a dark cloud. But I was determined to prove them wrong, to show them that I was a force to be reckoned with. As the day wore on and the arguments continued, I could sense the momentum shifting. I was ready to expose the truth, armed with the evidence I had gathered and the resolve to reclaim my life. I would not let their greed dictate my narrative any longer. This was my fight, and I was ready to face the consequences, no matter what they may be. The courtroom drama unfolded like a carefully orchestrated play, and I was both the lead actress and the director of my own fate. I could feel the impending climax, the moment when all the pieces would fall into place, and I would reveal the truth that had been shrouded in deceit. Today was not just another day in court. It was the turning point in my fight for justice, and I would not back down until I had reclaimed my dignity. With each passing moment, my resolve deepened. I would stand tall, wielding the truth as my weapon against the lies and betrayal. I was Melissa, and I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine. As I prepared to reveal my knowledge and the evidence that would turn the tide in my favor, I could feel the palpable tension in the courtroom. My heart raced, but this was my moment. I would not falter now. I had come too far to back down. The final confrontation awaited, and I was ready to face it head-on, ready to expose the truth. This was not just a battle for my estate. It was a battle for my life, my dignity, and my right to be seen as more than just a pawn in their game. The stage was set, and I was ready to take my stand. This was my fight, and I would emerge victorious. The courtroom buzzed with a mix of anxiety and uncertainty in the aftermath of the trial. I sat in a small, dimly lit room just outside the courtroom, the air heavy with the scent of stale coffee and worn-out hope. My hands were clammy against the smooth surface of the table, the weight of my children's expressions still lingering in my mind. I could hear their muffled voices just beyond the door, a cacophony of emotions that blended together into a distant hum. I had stood my ground, but the reality of what lay ahead felt insurmountable. As I sat there, flashes of the trial replayed in my mind. Their laughter and mockery had haunted me, a cruel reminder of how far we had fallen. I remembered the tense moments in court when they presented their case, their words sharp and cutting as they painted me as the villain in this tragic narrative. The sting of betrayal had not faded, and I could feel the familiar ache in my chest as I faced the consequences of their actions. The door creaked open, and my attorney entered, a mix of exhaustion and relief etched across his face. "Melissa, we need to talk about what comes next," he said, his voice steady but tinged with concern. I nodded, my throat tight as I braced myself for his words. "The judge has ruled in your favor, but there will be repercussions for your children. They will have to face the consequences of their actions," he continued, his gaze piercing through the fog of my thoughts. I felt a mix of relief and dread wash over me. They had underestimated me, but at what cost? "What does that mean for them?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The thought of my children facing repercussions sent a chill down my spine. I had not fought just to see them suffer. I wanted them to understand the weight of their greed, but not like this. They will have to reconcile their actions with the court, and there may be financial penalties. "It's a complicated situation, but it's necessary for you to reclaim your standing and dignity," he explained, his tone careful yet firm. I could see the concern in his eyes, and I felt the heaviness of the decision that lay before me. "I just wanted them to understand that this isn't about money. It's about family, respect, and love," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. I could feel the tears pooling in my eyes, but I blinked them away, unwilling to show weakness now. I had fought too hard to reclaim my dignity to crumble at the prospect of their suffering. "Melissa, sometimes the hardest lessons are the most important. You've shown incredible strength, and it's time for your children to recognize that," he urged, his words wrapping around me like a warm blanket. I took a deep breath, the air thick with the weight of my choices. I had to decide what kind of closure I wanted. After a moment of silence, I nodded slowly, my heart aching at the thought of my children facing the fallout of their actions. "I want them to learn, but I don't want them to be broken by this. I want them to understand the importance of family and love, not just money," I said, my voice steadying as I spoke. "That's a noble sentiment, but the court may not see it that way. You have to protect yourself first," he replied, his expression serious. I felt the tension in my chest ease slightly as I reflected on his words. I had fought for my dignity, but I couldn't ignore the love I still felt for my children. As I left the small room, I found myself standing outside the courtroom once more. The air felt different, charged with a strange mix of sadness and hope. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation that awaited me. This was my chance to speak to my children, to convey the message I had fought so hard to uphold. I wanted them to see beyond the estate, to understand that our family bond was more important than any material possession. I stepped into the hallway, my heart racing as I approached my children, who were huddled together, their expressions a mixture of anger and disbelief. They looked up as I approached, their faces a canvas of conflicting emotions. "Mom, we need to talk about what just happened," Sarah said, her voice strained. I could see the fight in her eyes, and I felt a pang of sorrow for the girl I once knew. "I know you're upset, and you have every right to be, but I want you to understand that this isn't just about the estate. It's about family, love, and the sacrifices I made for you both," I said, my voice steady as I addressed them. Mark scoffed, crossing his arms defensively. "You think we don't care about those things? We just wanted what was fair," he shot back, his anger bubbling to the surface. "Fair, or what you think is fair. You've treated me as an obstacle, not as your mother. I had hoped that you would see the truth, that love is more valuable than any inheritance," I replied, feeling the heat of my words hang in the air between us. Their expressions softened for just a moment, and I could see the flicker of recognition in their eyes. "Mom, we didn't know how to handle everything after your stroke. It was overwhelming, and we didn't think," Sarah started, but I interrupted her, my heart aching for the girl I had raised. "I understand that, but your actions have consequences, and it's time for you both to reflect on what's truly important. I want you to learn from this, not just for my sake, but for your futures as well," I said, my voice breaking with emotion. The tension in the air shifted, and I could see the walls around them begin to crack. For the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps they could learn, perhaps they could grow beyond the greed that had clouded their judgment. As we stood there, the weight of our words hung heavy in the air, a fragile bridge forming between us. I wanted to believe that we could find our way back to each other, that this would be the turning point in our relationship. I could feel the warmth of understanding beginning to seep in, a testament to the love that still lingered beneath the surface. I would not give up on my children, even if the road ahead was uncertain. In that moment, I felt a sense of closure beginning to form, not just for me, but for them as well. We were all in this together, bound by the ties of family and love. I had fought for my dignity, and now I hoped to inspire them to fight for theirs. The journey ahead would not be easy, but it was a necessary one, filled with the possibility of redemption and healing. I was Melissa, their mother, and I would not let this be the end of our story. The tension in the courtroom was palpable, a thick, electric charge that seemed to suspend time itself. I sat rigid in my chair, my palms clammy against the cool surface of the table, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on my chest. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, but all I could focus on was the pit in my stomach. My children, seated across from me, wore expressions of disbelief and smug confidence, their body language betraying a sense of superiority that made my blood boil. They thought they had already won. As the proceedings began, I felt the familiar rush of anger surge through me, fueled by the attorney representing my children. His voice dripped with condescension as he addressed the judge, framing my condition as a question of competency. Your Honor, we are here to discuss the validity of Mrs. Melissa's claims regarding her estate. It is imperative to note that her current condition raises questions about her ability to manage her assets, he declared, his tone smooth and polished, as if rehearsed to perfection. The words struck me like a slap, igniting a fire deep within. I could feel my heart racing, each beat a reminder of the fight I had fought to reclaim my dignity. I clenched my fists under the table, feeling the sharp edges of my nails digging into my palms, grounding me in the moment. This was not just about my estate, it was about my very identity, my right to be seen as a capable individual rather than a mere pawn in their game. Objection, Your Honor, I blurted out, surprising even myself with the strength of my voice. The courtroom fell silent, all eyes turning towards me. My children recoiled in shock, their expressions shifting from arrogance to disbelief. I straightened my back, summoning every ounce of courage I had. I am more than capable of managing my affairs. My children do not have the right to decide my worth based on their greed. The words poured out of me with a ferocity I hadn't anticipated, each syllable a declaration of my resolve. The judge raised an eyebrow, her expression unreadable, but I could sense a flicker of interest in her gaze. Mrs. Melissa, your passion is commendable, but I must remind you that this is a court of law, not a platform for emotional outbursts, she said, her voice firm yet not unkind. I nodded, swallowing my frustration, but the fire within me had been lit. I was not going to let them dictate my narrative any longer. As the day progressed, my children took turns presenting their case, weaving a narrative of deceit and manipulation. Each time they spoke, I felt the walls of the courtroom close in around me, their words sharp and cutting. They painted me as a burden, a liability, and I could see the way they glanced at the judge, seeking her approval. My heart raced at the betrayal, but I wouldn't let it defeat me. Mark, with his practiced tone, insisted, Mom's health has deteriorated significantly, and it is clear that she cannot manage her own affairs. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, furious at his blatant lies. That's not true, I interjected, my voice ringing through the room. I'm fighting for my life and my dignity. You are the ones who have conspired against me. The tension in the room crackled as whispers spread like wildfire. I could feel the tears prickling at the corners of my eyes, but I fought them back, determined to maintain my composure. I had sacrificed so much for them, and yet here they were, trying to strip everything away. Then came the moment of truth. My attorney stood to present the evidence I had meticulously gathered, the culmination of my efforts to expose their greed and lies. As he outlined the documents, I could see the judge's expression shift, her brow furrowing in concentration. I held my breath, the weight of anticipation suffocating me. This was my chance. With each word my attorney spoke, I felt a renewed sense of strength. I was not just a victim, I was a force to be reckoned with. I had fought tooth and nail to be here, and I would not back down now. I was ready to turn the tide in my favor, to reclaim my dignity and show my children that love was more valuable than any inheritance. My heart raced as I prepared to reveal the truth that had been shrouded in deceit. This was my fight, and I was ready to face the consequences, no matter what they may be. The courtroom was my stage, and I would not falter. This was my moment to shine, and I would seize it with both hands. I was Melissa, their mother, and I would stand tall, ready to reclaim my life. The morning sun trickled through the sheer curtains, casting a soft glow in my living room, but it did little to warm the chill that wrapped around my heart. I sat at the dining table, strewn with a chaotic mix of court documents and hastily scribbled notes. The scent of fresh coffee lingered in the air, a bittersweet reminder of the clarity I sought in the midst of chaos. My fingers brushed against the papers, their edges crisp and sharp, much like the resolve building inside me. I had to be prepared. Today was about reclaiming my rights and dignity against my children's greed. As I gathered my thoughts, the memories of their laughter echoed in my mind, a haunting melody that underscored the urgency of my mission. I had spent too long feeling like a spectator in my own life. The cool surface of the table steadied my trembling hands as I began to outline my strategy. I needed to approach this confrontation with a combination of emotional strength and strategic precision. My heart raced with a mix of fear and determination. I would not let them see me falter. I recalled the conversations I had with Linda, my steadfast friend who believed in my strength. She had urged me to prepare for this moment, to remind myself of my worth. The thought of her support ignited a flicker of hope within me. I reached for my phone and texted her, my fingers dancing over the screen. "I need you today, can you be there for me?" Hitting send felt like a small victory, a step toward reclaiming my power. I had allies, I was not alone in this fight. As the minutes ticked by, I felt the weight of anticipation pressing down on me. I closed my eyes, envisioning the courtroom, the judge's stern gaze, and the faces of my children twisted with disbelief. They thought they had won, that I was nothing more than a burden, but I would show them otherwise. Breathing deeply, I focused on the words I wanted to say, crafting them in my mind like a warrior sharpening her blade. Suddenly I stood up, my heart pounding with newfound resolve. I walked over to the window, the sunlight streaming in, illuminating the room in hues of gold. I gazed at the world outside, alive and vibrant, a stark contrast to the dark thoughts that had clouded my mind. I would not let their greed extinguish my light. I was still Melissa, their mother, and I had every right to fight for what was mine. With a determined stride, I returned to the table, the weight of the papers grounding me. Each document represented not just my estate but my life's work, the sacrifices I had made for my family. I began to jot down key points. I am capable, I deserve respect. This is about love, not money. My heart raced at the thought of articulating these truths in court. I would not be a victim, I would stand tall and assert my rights. As I meticulously organized my notes, I felt a fierce determination swell within me. I envisioned the confrontation, my words cutting through the tension like a knife. I would reveal my knowledge, the evidence I had gathered, and I would not back down until the truth was laid bare. I rehearsed my statements in my mind, each repetition strengthening my resolve. The clock ticked ominously, and I felt the urgency of time slipping away. I needed to be ready, not just for the courtroom, but for the emotional battle that awaited. I took a moment to steady my breath, feeling the cool air fill my lungs. This was not just about an estate, it was about my dignity, my right to be seen and heard. I would not let my children's greed define the narrative of my life any longer. Their plans would unravel in front of the judge, and I would emerge victorious. With each passing moment, I felt the fire within me grow stronger. I would not be reduced to a punchline in their twisted game. I was reclaiming my identity, my power, and today would mark the beginning of my victory. Today was my final stand, and I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine. The courtroom felt electric, the air thick with anticipation and unspoken tension as I prepared to confront my children one last time. Sunlight filtered through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the faces of the assembled onlookers. Each tick of the clock seemed to echo with the weight of my heart, a relentless reminder of the stakes at hand. I could feel my children's eyes on me, their expressions a mix of disbelief and arrogance, as if they still couldn't fathom that I would dare to stand against them. As the judge called the proceedings to order, I felt my pulse quicken. Today was not merely about my estate, it was about reclaiming my dignity and asserting my worth against their insatiable greed. My attorney had prepared me for this moment, but as I sat there, I could feel the cool wood of the table beneath my palms grounding me amidst the storm brewing inside. I glanced at my children, their smugness a bitter reminder of how far we had drifted apart. "Your Honor, I'd like to present my case," I declared, my voice steady yet laced with an undercurrent of emotion. The judge nodded, her expression impassive, but I could sense a flicker of interest in her gaze. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of all my experiences flooding back. My children had painted me as a burden, but today I would show them that I was more than that. I began outlining the evidence I had gathered, each piece a testament to my capability and resolve. I recounted the moments of laughter and love that had once defined our family, juxtaposing them against the cruel reality of their actions. I am not merely a victim of circumstance. I am Melissa, their mother, a woman who has fought for her family all her life. I deserve respect, not derision. My voice broke slightly, but I held my ground, feeling the fire of my convictions push me forward. Mark stood up, his face twisted with anger. "Mom, you're living in denial. You can't run your own life anymore." His accusation hung in the air like a dark cloud. I could see their arrogance surfacing, the belief that they could easily win this battle against me. Anger bubbled within me, but I forced myself to remain calm. I was not going to let their mockery deter me. "I am not in denial, Mark. I am fully aware of my circumstances, and I refuse to be defined by your greed," I shot back, my voice rising. The courtroom fell silent, all eyes turning toward me, the tension palpable. The judge raised an eyebrow, intrigued by my outburst but maintaining control. I could feel the momentum shifting, the air crackling with the energy of the moment. My attorney took the opportunity to present my financial documents, each one meticulously organized to counter their claims. I could see the surprise flicker across the judge's features as she examined the evidence. My heart raced as I realized that I was making an impact. My children's expressions shifted from confidence to uncertainty, and I seized the moment. This isn't just about money, it's about family. I have given you everything, and yet you have turned against me for a dollar sign. I want you to understand that love is worth more than any inheritance. My voice carried through the room, powerful and resonant. I could feel the weight of my words settling into the hearts of those present, the truth piercing through the fog of greed that had clouded my children's judgment. Sarah stood up, her shoulders tense, and for a moment I thought she might break. Mom, we just wanted what we thought was fair. We didn't mean to hurt you. Her voice wavered, and I could see the cracks forming in their facade of indifference. Fair? How can you call it fair when you've treated me like an obstacle? This is not just about what you believe you deserve, it's about the love we once shared. I replied, feeling the tears prick at the corners of my eyes. I blinked them away, unwilling to show weakness. I was fighting for my dignity, and I would not allow their actions to define my worth. The judge cleared her throat, bringing the focus back to the court. Thank you, Mrs. Melissa. I believe we are all beginning to understand the emotional weight behind this case. However, this is a court of law. The evidence presented today will guide my ruling, and it's imperative to remain focused on the facts. Her voice was firm, yet the empathy in her tone felt like a lifeline. As the proceedings continued, I could feel the tide turning. My children were no longer the confident predators they had entered as. They were uncertain and vulnerable. I had exposed their greed, and in doing so I had reclaimed my narrative. I knew then that this was not just a battle for my estate, but a battle for my identity and dignity. I was Melissa, their mother, and I would not be erased. As the final arguments approached, I felt a rush of adrenaline. I had fought hard for this moment, and I would ensure it counted. I took a deep breath, collecting my thoughts one last time. I was ready to show the world who I truly was, ready to reclaim my place, not just as a mother, but as a woman of strength and resilience. The judge's gavel echoed through the room, signaling the end of the arguments. I stood tall, feeling a sense of release wash over me. No matter the outcome, I had fought for my truth, and that was a victory in itself. I was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that my voice had been heard, that I had stood firm against the tide of betrayal, and emerged stronger than ever before. The aftermath of the court case settled around me like a heavy fog, obscuring the clarity I had fought so hard to achieve. I sat in my living room, the sunlight filtering through the curtains, illuminating the dust motes swirling in the air, a stark contrast to the turmoil within my heart. The scent of freshly brewed coffee wafted from the kitchen, mingling with the faint aroma of lavender from the candles I had lit, providing a semblance of comfort amidst the chaos. My hands trembled slightly as I held the court documents, the final ruling still echoing in my mind. I had won my case, a victory that felt bittersweet, an end to the battle but not to the scars it had left behind. My children had faced the consequences of their actions, and as I replayed the judge's words in my mind, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. They had been ordered to reconcile with me, to acknowledge the pain their greed had caused. Yet the thought of them suffering weighed heavily on my conscience. I had not fought just to see them punished. I wanted them to understand the value of family, to learn that love transcended any material wealth. I closed my eyes, allowing the memories of our happier times to wash over me. Laughter shared over family dinners, vacations filled with joy, and the warmth of a mother's love. The door creaked open, and Sarah stepped inside, her expression tentative, a stark contrast to the defiance she had shown in court. I could see the remnants of anger in her eyes, but beneath it lay confusion and regret. "Mom, can we talk?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, my heart racing at the prospect of this conversation. I had longed for this moment, a chance to bridge the chasm that had formed between us. As she took a seat across from me, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. "I know we've hurt you, and I'm sorry for that," she began, her gaze dropping to the floor. "I thought I was fighting for what was fair. I didn't realize how much it would hurt you until it was too late." Her admission hung in the air, a fragile thread connecting us. I could see the struggle in her eyes, the weight of her choices pressing down on her. "Fairness isn't just about money, Sarah. It's about understanding and compassion. I wanted you to see me as your mother, not just as a means to an end," I replied, my voice steady yet laced with emotion. The silence between us felt heavy, but I could sense the walls beginning to crumble. Mark entered the room, his expression softer than it had been during the trial. He glanced at Sarah before turning his gaze toward me. "Mom, I didn't mean to treat you like that. I was scared and overwhelmed. I thought I was doing what was best for us, but I see now that I was wrong," he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. It was a moment of vulnerability, one that I had hoped for but never expected to witness. "It's okay to be scared, Mark, but you have to understand that your actions have consequences, and those consequences affect all of us. I want us to heal, to rebuild what we've lost," I said, my heart swelling with a mix of sadness and hope. I could feel the warmth of understanding beginning to seep in, a testament to the love that still lingered beneath the surface. As we talked, the tension in the room began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of acceptance. I shared my feelings, my fears of being seen as a burden, and the pain of betrayal. They listened, their expressions